The president again today touted several drugs that he believes might help against coronavirus. He again used the word game changer today for one of them, a malaria drug, chloroquine. That's also used to treat lupus and which is now in short supply for some who need it for lupus and other things. He told the story of a man whom he did not name who took the drug and recovered. He did not tell the story of the Arizona man and his wife who self-dosed on chloroquine phosphate, which is used to clean aquariums. That man died. His wife is critically ill, likely because of something they saw or read about chloroquine. Despite a new but still not peer-reviewed study out today identifying 69 drugs that might be effective against the virus, what's lacking is a solid body of evidence that any of them work and are safe. More now on the subject from Dr. Gupta.
Why should we be testing it in a test tube for a year and a half when we have thousands of people that are very sick? They're very, very sick. And we can use it on those people and maybe make them better. And in some cases, maybe save their lives.
President Trump says he's optimistic about some potential treatments for the novel coronavirus, in particular, a malaria drug called chloroquine.
You know, this has been something that's been around for many years. It's been phenomenal, strong, powerful drug for malaria. But we think it might work on this, based on evidence, based on very strong evidence.
It's true, the medication has been around for more than 80 years and has a few side effects, including nausea and mood changes, as well as possible interactions with other drugs. Now, enthusiasm for the possibility of treating the novel coronavirus largely centers on one study out of France, which used a derivative of chloroquine used with an antibiotic commonly known as the Z-Pak. The study was small, and the patients were followed for only 6 days.
The study that looked at that drug and showed activity was a study that involved about 20 patients and only 6 in the arm that showed the benefit. And the benefit that they showed was that they decreased the amount of virus in their noses when you did nasal swabs in those patients. So it could very well be that the drug is reducing viral shedding but having no impact on the clinical course of those patients. So the data on that is very preliminary.
We took a closer look at the study, and here's what we found. There were originally 26 patients in the study who were treated. 20 completed the trial. 1 left the hospital before the trial ended. 1 couldn't tolerate the medication. 3 went to the intensive care unit. That's an 11% critical care rate. And 1 died, a 4% mortality rate. Now, those numbers are higher critical care and mortality rates than the general population of infected. But keep in mind, again, it's a small study. There was another study from 2011 which found that while chloroquine was effective in the lab against the flu, it ultimately wasn't effective in humans. Look, that's why trials are needed, and they can be done quickly. Many labs in the World Health Organization had already started studying these drugs and dozens of others to help us find an answer for a disease that currently has no known cure.
Using untested medicines without the right evidence could raise false hope and even do more harm than good and cause a shortage of essential medicines that are needed to treat other diseases.
And at the end of last week, chloroquine was added to the American Society of Health System Pharmacists drug shortage list.
So, Sanjay, I mean, is there a timeline of just when more of these trials might be completed by?
Well, it's probably going to be a few months. It's hard to say. There's 2 trials that are going on with chloroquine. One is for treatment, and one is to try and give more as a prophylaxis to try and prevent people from getting as bad an infection. It's going to take a while, Anderson. I mean, the fact that it's an existing drug, that helps, but you still got to go through trials. I mean, it's not entirely clear at all that this has worked. There was a very promising trial that just ended last week, Anderson. Probably the most promising trial started just a week after the first patient was diagnosed. And after they went through the trial, they found that it didn't work, this particular drug therapy. So they move on. You've got to do these trials to make sure you're actually dealing with what you think you're dealing with.
It is so interesting to have the President of the United States kind of touting these and the medical folks, Dr. Fauci and others standing behind him, sort of not wanting to contradict him directly and say, essentially, there's a reason studies are done. Things might look good on paper or might look good in a test tube, but unless it's actually been legitimately studied, you can't say. But this president does say.
Yeah, I mean, look, that was wild, frankly, to watch this back and forth between President Trump and and Dr. Anthony Fauci. I mean, Dr. Fauci was sort of just having to sort of fact check on the fly. But look, there's a lot of hunches out there. There's dozens of drugs that are being looked at right now. There's lots of hunches out there, but the reality is that most of them don't really get beyond phase 2 trials. So again, that's why you got to do the studies, Anderson.